made some seriously important decisions this week in terms of COVID and restrictions. And true to form, the government did not provide any space for a debate whatsoever. There has been a democracy deficit from the start of COVID in this country. The elected representatives of the people of Ireland have been sidestepped from most of the important decisions that are happening. It was only because I called for a debate at Order of Business on Tuesday that we were actually having this debate, and it's been held at a time where most of the TDs have actually gone home, which is an absolute disgrace. Now, the government said in September that NPHET would be wound up in the middle of October. Now, that's completely off the agenda. Paul Reid stated in August that once we hit 80% vaccination rates, that we could fully reopen. That milestone has come and gone and been ignored. Ireland is now the most vaccinated nation in Europe, with a 92% adult vaccination rate. We're the longest and most severely restricted country in Europe. It has cost more here than in most any other country in Europe. In actual fact, it has cost twice per capita what is cost in the European average to deal with COVID in this state. And still, we have the 7th highest incidence of COVID in the European Union. This government's policy is radically failing when it comes to COVID. And the truth of the matter is we're actually in a very dangerous place now, an extremely dangerous place now. The government simply don't know what is happening. The government have been blindsided by what's actually happening in society at the moment. And I listened to Luke O'Neill on the radio this week admit that they don't know what's actually happening. Evidence is rapidly accumulating that COVID is spreading between people who are vaccinated. Now, nobody here could have imagined or second-guessed that. I'm not saying the government is out of place with regards to that. Killian de Gascoigne has stated that whilst vaccination reduces the risk of Delta infection, fully vaccinated individuals have viral loads similar to unvaccinated and can efficiently transmit infection. So vaccinated people are catching COVID, they are transmitting COVID, they are ending up in hospital, they're ending up in ICU, and tragically, some are losing their lives. Now, don't get me wrong. Vaccines significantly reduce mortality and morbidity. Vaccines are a significant tool in relation to dealing with COVID. But transmission amongst vaccinated people is happening at a rate that is far higher than anybody expected in this country. And that creates massive problems for this government. Now, the first problem is that this government have put all of their eggs in the vaccine basket, and that the government is allergic to antigen tests in this country is causing massive damage to our country. And I have to say, the government's opposition to the proper use of antigen tests is, in my view, criminal in this country. It is absolutely shocking. So right now, under your law, a person who is vaccinated but who has COVID is allowed into a pub or restaurant and allowed to spread the illness to other vaccinated people. But a person who is not vaccinated, but who has had an antigen test and is COVID-free, is banned from that hospitality sector. So despite that being phenomenally discriminating, segregating, etc., the policy simply isn't working. And I want to agree with a previous TD there. There are hundreds of thousands of people in this country whose civil liberties have been taken off them. For them, there is a two-tier citizenship, and they are being significantly othered. And they're being doing so for something that is not actually working, not actually having the desired effect. Now, I have heard in TV studios and radio studios, literally for the last year, TDs and ministers saying that they are completely in favour of antigen testing, say that they are looking into it, say that it will be rolled out soon. And here we are, 12 months later, and there has been practically little difference in what's actually happening. It is not being rolled out. There is a chasm between what language that the government is using and the actions that are being implemented by this government. I think it's a prime example of government capture. Ministers saying what they think people want to hear, but actually not implementing it because the civil service tells them not to. NPHET is in a small minority of national public health organisations in the European Union in its opposition to antigen testing. Antigen testing is widespread all over Europe in a means to stop COVID spreading in hospitality. It saves lives, it allows businesses to function, and it is non-discriminatory. And take Denmark as a comparator. Denmark has a lower vaccination rate than Ireland. It has no hospitality restrictions September. They did have a vaccine plus antigen pass when they opened up fully in hospitality in May. They've dropped that, obviously, since September. And they have a COVID rate a third of this state. A third of this state, Minister. It's absolutely damning. And the difference has been that they are antigen testing radically. Antigen testing, even in the plans that the government promoted this week, is still largely aspirational. If you look, it states that the HSE should implement a programme of COVID-19 antigen testing, and this only applies to people who are identified as being fully vaccinated close contacts, a small number of people, and the government is posting it out to these people. It reminds me of the iodine tablets issue that a former Fianna Fáil minister from Wicklow also brought out a number of years ago. It also states your plan, the Rapid Testing Expert Advisory Group has been requested to provide a view as to the potential utility of voluntary self-testing. Your plan, Minister, talks about the Rapid Testing Expert Advisory Group are requested to examine the potential role and the feasibility of rapid testing. We're talking about views and feasibility 12 months after the rest of Europe engaged in rapid antigen testing, successfully using it as one of the tools to mitigate against COVID. Now, for me, this is the equivalent of the Donegal catch fisherman stating that, they are keeping his idea on file in a filing cabinet, Minister. It is just the most frustrating thing that I've seen. And I've listened to, your own TDs and the frustration in their voices around this. I believe it's an absolute disgrace that they're not being rolled out. It is costing lives, it is costing health, it is costing the economy, and it's costing civil liberties in this state. I want to just talk briefly, if I can, about capacity. Capacity in the health service has hardly shifted. The ICU beds and the emergency beds in my own hospital in Navan, the government and the HSE are looking to close it. The front line of the battle against COVID, and the government are looking to close them. Now, I admit there has been a stay of execution just in the last week, but it's still the priority of the government. And you mentioned, I think, in relation to unvaccinated people being the cause of waiting lists in your speech, and I hope I'm not misinterpreting what you've said in that. Minister, your government and your partners in government own the waiting lists in this country. And then, I want to talk about the immunity cliff that is happening currently in this state. And, we are calling for the government to very quickly allow for booster shots to be made available in nursing homes around the state. And they should be given to everybody that's working in the nursing homes and everybody there. The idea that it's for only over 65s, while there could be people there just under that age, doesn't make sense. We need to make sure that the nursing home area is not the epicentre of the next wave. And just finally, just with regard to antigen testing, I fear if the government don't implement widespread antigen testing, the government will be looking at the other tool that it knows well, and that is deepening restrictions. And that would be a disaster for this country.